Let's talk about the book of Revelation. For so many of us, it might just be the most intimidating book in the Bible, a kind of cryptic roadmap for the end of the world. It brings up these intense images of catastrophe and judgment and, frankly, a lot of fear. But what if that's not its true purpose? What if we've been missing the point? What if it's not actually about the end of time, but about how to live faithfully right now?
Yeah, these are the images that immediately pop into our heads, right? And for centuries, they fueled this really terrifying interpretation of a world that's just spiraling into chaos, all according to some divine, unchangeable schedule.
For a lot of people, especially if you've ever come across popular books like Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth, Revelation is treated like a literal code book. It gets used to try and decode modern geopolitics, mapping current events onto ancient prophecy. And it becomes the script for the future that's read with a ton of anxiety.
And that is the central question we're going to explore here. We're going to look at a completely different way of reading this book, one that's really grounded in its original history and purpose. And it's a reading that I think you'll find uncovers not a message of horror, but one of profound hope, courage, and resistance.
Okay, so to really understand Revelation, we first have to look past all the sensationalism. We have to ask a different question. What was this book trying to accomplish for its very first audience, the people who were living in the first century under the immense shadow of the Roman Empire? And this is absolutely crucial. The book's original Greek title, Apocalypsis, doesn't mean end of the world. It means a revelation or an unveiling. So its purpose isn't to predict when the world will end, but to pull back the curtain on the true nature of the world in its own time, to reveal what's really going on, the powers at play, both seen and unseen. So you've really got two major ways to approach the book. On one hand, there's the popular reading that sees a literal timeline and that so often leads to fear and speculation. But on the other hand, there's the scholarly reading, which is what we're going to explore. It sees Revelation as powerful protest literature, a symbolic vision designed to give a suffering community the spiritual tools to resist a corrupt empire. You see, Revelation wasn't written in a vacuum. It was a deeply personal and strategic letter, written by a real person to real communities who were facing immense pressure. And understanding this context, well, that's the key that unlocks its meaning. The author uses a specific literary style we call apocalyptic rhetoric. Now, this style uses all this vivid, symbolic language, the beasts, the thrones, the cosmic battles, not to be literal, but to be deeply persuasive. Think about it. In a world where directly criticizing Rome could get you killed, this symbolism was like a kind of theological camouflage. It allowed the author to critique the empire and inspire hope without being overtly treasonous. So let's place ourselves in that exact moment. It's around 95 CE. A man named John is in exile on the island of Patmos. He's writing during the reign of the Emperor Domitian, a time when worshiping the emperor was becoming a critical test of your loyalty to Rome. And his letter is being sent to 7 actual churches in Asia Minor, each one struggling in its own way with compromise or persecution.
So you see, this wasn't some abstract prediction meant for 2,000 years in the future. It was a pastoral letter. It had a very strategic purpose: to comfort the faithful who were suffering, to challenge those who were getting a little too cozy with the empire's values, and to expose the false gods of power and wealth. It was about how to survive.
Once we understand Revelation as this kind of protest literature, it helps us decode its famous symbols. The beasts, the cities, the plagues, they aren't literal monsters or future events. They are powerful theological critiques of the political and economic systems of John's day, and, by extension, any day. Take the beast, for example. It's not some future political dictator with a microchip. In John's vision, the beast represents the corrupting nature of imperial power itself. Any state that demands your total allegiance, that uses propaganda to deceive you, and that basically sets itself up in the place of God. For John's first audience, that was clearly Rome. And it's the same thing with Babylon the Great. For John's readers, that was a well-understood code for Rome. But it's also something bigger. Babylon symbolizes any civilization that's built on exploitation. It's a system where the luxury of the few depends on the suffering of the many, a seductive culture that promises you wealth and comfort if you'll just play by its corrupt rules. And this is a really crucial insight from scholars like Elizabeth Schussler-Fiorenza. She points out that the biggest threat to the churches wasn't always violent persecution. It was the slow, seductive pull of just blending in, the temptation to compromise one's faith for a little more security, a little more comfort. That was the real battle. Okay, so now we come to the absolute center of the book. This is the image that turns our entire understanding of power, of victory, and even of God completely upside down. The world, then and now, pretty much understands power in one way. It's the power of the empire, the power of the beast. It's victory that's achieved through force, domination, and violence. It wins by taking life. But Revelation presents this radical, stunning alternative. The hero of this entire epic story isn't a warrior. It's not a lion. It's a lamb. And its power is revealed not in domination, but in faithful witness. Its victory is won not by inflicting death, but by enduring it. The scholar Gordon Zerbe really gets to the heart of it with this. He says the lamb's victory isn't about annihilating enemies. It's about revealing a totally different kind of power, the power of self-giving, sacrificial love. And that is what truly defeats the logic of empire. This one single image is the interpretive key to the whole book. At the very center of the universe, at the throne of all cosmic power, stands a lamb, looking as if it had been slaughtered. This tells us that the ultimate reality in the universe isn't brute force. It's vulnerable, resilient, self-giving love. That is true power. So, if Revelation isn't ultimately about destruction, what is its final message? Well, it's a vision of profound hope, and it's a hope that actually works as a powerful act of resistance against all the despair in the world.
The book doesn't end with people getting zapped away to some distant heaven. No, instead, the holy city, the New Jerusalem, comes down from heaven to earth. This is a vision of transformation, not evacuation. It's about God's presence renewing and healing all of creation right here.
And the details in this vision are just so beautiful and significant. It's a vision of God dwelling with humanity. There's a tree whose leaves are for the healing of the nations. And it's a world where the very sources of our grief, mourning and crying and pain are gone, not because we've escaped them, but because they have been healed. This verse is one of the most powerful in all of Scripture. And it's not just a comforting, sentimental thought. It's a revolutionary promise. In a world defined by the power of empire, which always says that death and suffering get the last word, this verse declares that God's final word is life and healing and restoration. And so ultimately, reading Revelation this way helps us understand that hope isn't just a passive wish. It's an active, defiant choice. To actually believe in a world of justice and healing and peace, and to try to live by that vision right now, is to actively resist the seductive power of every Babylon that tells us nothing can ever change. It is, in the end, choosing the way of the Lamb.